Welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, and today I'll be talking about the usage of tarot in the movie The Love Witch. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. The best way to support the podcast right now is to listen daily, rate, review, and to follow or subscribe in your chosen podcast app. The next best way is to check out my Patreon at patreon.com/everydaytarot. I have some new benefits over there, so go ahead and check it out. The link is in the show notes if you need to find it. You can always go to my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot for all the latest information related to the podcast and to find images of the cards that I pull. If you're local to the greater Puget Sound area, I'd love to see you at one of my Let's Talk Tarot meetup group events where we all bring some of our favorite decks and play around with tarot and oracle decks together. Our next meetup will be on April 6th at 11:15 a.m. and we're meeting at the Haunted Farmers Market in South Tacoma. You can use the meetup link to check out details on upcoming events and to RSVP. All right, so welcome to the last episode of Season 4. In the first season, I introduced tarot through talking about tarot basics. In Seasons 2 and 3, I went through the major arcana and the 4 suits, one per episode. And this season, I'm talking all about tarot in pop culture. And today, I'm talking about the usage of tarot in the movie The Love Witch. So if you haven't heard about it, The Love Witch is a 2016 American comedy horror film written, edited, directed, produced, and scored by Anna Biller. The film stars Samantha Robinson as Elaine Parks, who's a modern-day witch who uses spells and magic to get men to fall in love with her with somewhat disastrous results. The Love Witch was released in 2016, even though it has a very classic 1960s look to it. Like I said, the filmmaker, Anna Biller, she created it. She created this whole sort of world, I would say, because she not only produced, wrote, directed, and edited the film, but she also designed the sets and the costumes and wrote the music. So she really she had a very specific vision for this film. And I pulled from an article from What We're Watching about The Love Witch that it says, on the surface, The Love Witch is a comedy horror about a serial killer named Elaine whose obsession with romantic love drives her to lure men with witchcraft. But the heightened artifice, stock characters, and plot tropes prompt the viewer to think more deeply about the assumptions around gender and romantic love at the root of popular culture. I think it's a super fun film. The aesthetic is amazing. Again, it talks about a character as a modern witch. There's a lot of, I would say, aspects and commentary on feminism and witchcraft, and I'll get into it a little bit more, but we will have spoilers for the movie. Again, you sort of know from the beginning that she has killed men and she's going to keep doing so. And so that's not really a spoiler, but yeah, I would just recommend that you see it. I think it's fun. It's not, I don't know, it is horror, but there's no jump scares. There's no, they show some things, so there's some nudity and some blood, but it's not exactly gory. It's a lot more about again, our views on gender and love, what women should and shouldn't be, what relationships are like, and also people's perceptions of witchcraft. All right, so let's get into the cards that are actually depicted. So again, our character is a witch in this, so we see a lot of different types of witchcraft, I would say. We see her make potions, we see her do spells, we see she participates in kind of Wiccan, I would say, ceremonies. She seemingly is in a coven. She talks about that she was heartbroken and she found this group, this coven. She doesn't use the word coven, but this group of people, and that witchcraft saved her. So she really talks about that. And near the end of the film, she talks to one of the men. that's sort of questioning her and her motives, that witchcraft is her religion and saved her life. So very interesting. So again, so the first card we see adds like it's like the opening scene. She's driving in a convertible. She just left her old town. She's driving into new town. She's like smoking a cigarette out of her convertible. And we see sort of like her purse is in the passenger seat, and we see like this card, like a spread of cards out of her bag, and the top one we can see is the Three of Swords. Um, Again, the Three of Swords is usually depicted as like a heart with three swords stabbed into it, usually from like the top, from the side, and from the other side. Very symmetrical, and this card is very often depicted as heartbreak. So we sort of start out being like, okay, she's going through it. She's had some heartbreak. We see that she has some other tarot cards in there in her deck, but we can't really see what they are. The Three of Swords is on top. And like I said, it's like splayed out of her bag as she's driving. A little bit later, we see her do a three-card spread, and we get to see the Five of Cups, the Tower, and the Three of Swords again. The Three of Swords comes up many times throughout this movie because, again, it's really, I guess, sort of the surface level plot line is about like a woman that is going through a lot of heartbreak and is trying to find her one romantic love that she's looking for. There's sort of other things I would say going on kind of underneath, or what the filmmaker again has sort of what was trying to do and have commentary on, but we sort of see that, okay, so we have the Five of Cups, we have the Tower, and the Three of Swords, and she pulls these cards in the house after breakfast, after she kind of like went home with a guy that she found in town. He's like an outdoorsy guy. He has a cabin in the woods, and she invites herself to go home with him. So she pulls these cards in the house after breakfast, after she slept with him the night before. Although I think she used words made love. And she goes to check on him, and he's dead. So this is like what happens kind of like right before she finds him dead. And I'll get into that a little bit more. But all right, so let's talk about the cards. So the Five of Cups, if we think about the suits and the numbers for the suits, like usually we have ace through 10, and then we have page, knight, queen, king, generally. So the Five of Cups is like the halfway point sort of on the journey, if we consider 10 to be like the end or completion of the journey, and aces as the beginning. So the Five of Cups, and I am reading from the Fearless Tarot book by Elia Adam, How to Give a Positive Reading in Any Situation, talks about that the Five of Cups symbolizes the trance-light state of focusing on only the negative, even when all is not lost. The figure on the card gloomily stares at three spilled cups. He fails to notice the two perfectly upright cups still standing behind him. Behind the two standing cups is a bridge, and the bridge symbolizes the way over your obstacle will be made clear when you focus on what is working and what is positive in your life. This card also reveals that just because everything in your life isn't perfect, that doesn't mean you need to feel bad about it all day, month, year, or decade. Does your mind ever feel hypnotized with problems? Is it difficult to see all the blessings you currently have because you can't stop focusing on your losses? And does ruminating rob you of countless hours in the day? And it's very interesting because, again, in the scene, or I guess with Elaine and this character, that she is at his house right before she finds that he has died the next morning. We find out later she fed him some psychedelics. She does tell him this, and he just sort of blindly is like, sure, whatever, I'll take those. She created a drink of, I think they call it devil's weed. That's gonna look up what plant that might be. So yeah, perhaps datura is what it is. Yeah, I think so, because I think we actually see her then use Datura blossoms in her bath later, in one of the other scenes. So that would be my guess. And it is a highly toxic plant. So he willingly sort of like drinks this concoction that she makes the night before and is sort of seeing a lot of things. He sees all these vibrant colors. He's clearly like having hallucinations or is in a trance like state. So that's just kind of interesting that that's kind of what this card is about. I would say Elaine at points is also in a trance like state. She is excited to be with him, that he might love her and cherish her. He does sort of immediately already become like obsessed with her. He's like calling out her name in the night. Um, and yeah, again, we sort of see later on that she tells one of the other men that I'm the love witch. So she does utilize like love potions or spells and some of these poison plants to sort of do things that she wants to. um, so she finds out that she goes to check on him. She seems distraught, like she didn't necessarily mean to kill him. It's sort of the first instance that we see in the film, so it's sort of like ambiguous, like, oh, okay, did she mean to do this? Was this sort of like an accident? As the movie goes on, we see that she sort of in different ways kills multiple men. And so this does seem like an MO of hers after some time. But at first, there is this sort of like, was this intentional? Did this drug just kind of like overwhelm him and take him out? So again, that's a 5 of cups. Then the tower is like the second card. So she's doing a 3-card spread. She doesn't say what it is, if it's like a past, present, future, or mind, body, spirit. There's lots of different 3-card spreads, so it's hard to infer from that. But then the second card she pulls is the tower, and we actually watch her like pull the cards as well before she goes to check on Wayne. And so the tower often comes up in these pop culture tarot episodes that I've been doing. It's a common one. The tower is often about upheaval, sort of sometimes like chaos or transformation. Things are shifting. And so there is this. So if we sort of take these 3 cards, so it's like 5 of cups, translate state of negative thinking. The tower is the sort of upheaval or transformation or shift of energy or things moving. And then the third card she pulls is the 3 of swords again. So it's like, okay, translate state, upheaval, and then heartbreak. And I would say that that's kind of like what happens with the guy that she's with in this like scene. Again, we sort of see some more spreads later on, so we get a little bit more details, but that's sort of like what we associate with him, perhaps. Yeah, and she does go outside and she gathers flowers for like her spell, like seemingly to like, she buries him in the backyard. We see her like carry him out in a wheelbarrow, and she makes like a witch bottle. But yeah, I'll get more into the commentary like on femininity and witchcraft or witches later. But she says this like interesting thing as she's making the witch bottle. She says like we get voiceovers of her like talking. I guess it's sort of like hearing her inner dialogue, and we get some other characters' dialogue, inner dialogue later as well. But in this one, she's like saying like tampons aren't gross, women bleed and that's beautiful. Did you know most men have never even seen a used tampon? And then she kind of goes on and says a little bit more, and then she says, now a part of me will be with Wayne always. And she puts it into this witch's bottle, so like a part of her self. She puts, it looks like maybe like some rosemary in there, and some other things, and then she like puts it on top of his grave. And again, this comes into play later because the police find this information and it can be tied back to her bodily fluids. Okay, so that is with Wayne, and that's that 3-card spread. We get some other sort of like male characters, but another one that comes up is Richard. And Richard is Elaine's friend's husband. I think her name is Trish. Is her friend that she sort of meets on the way into town. And Trish goes out of town for the weekend or something like that. She tells Elaine that, and Elaine uses this time to go have dinner with Richard, and also seemingly like have sex and put a spell on him. Because he becomes obsessed with her. So we see actually later, we don't quite necessarily see all of the interaction. We see her sort of like seducing him, doing like strip tease in the home, and then we just see later on, like Richard looks like he hasn't slept. He's like, Trish is back home and she's asking him, "Well, what's going on? Are you okay?" And he gets very like defensive and he's hiding stuff and he's in his robe. Like he looks very disheveled, like he hasn't been sleeping and stuff like that. And we actually see him pull some cards. So he pulls the Nine of Swords, the Three of Swords, and the Devil. So let's look at those cards. All right, and again, I'm reading from the Fearless Tarot by Elia Adam book. So the Nine of Swords says it's about transcending your inner shadows. The Nine of Swords has been called the worst card in the deck. Interesting. Although the imagery isn't as jolting as some of the other cards, it is called the worst because it represents the potential of mental shadows to attack you from within. Fear, shame, guilt, feeling utterly alone, these are all tools our inner shadow uses to sabotage us. The brighter the light you shine, the greater the shadow you cast. Sensitive, kind, and creative people who bring light into the world must be especially strong when facing their shadows. Inner shadows are like nightmares. They are scary, but they don't really exist. You are stronger than your inner saboteur, and you must stand up to it when it tries to overtake your mind. Have you ever encountered your inner saboteur? Have people ever told you that you are a talented, amazing person and yet you don't believe it? Have you been letting your shadow sabotage you and thwart what you think is possible for your future? The man on the card just can't sleep. His mind has been overthrown by shadow thinking. He's in the dark, the realm of anxiety. His mind has been racing all night, cycling from fear about the future to guilt about his past to self-loathing for not having control in the present. His shadow is holding him hostage, making him forget his light and how valuable he is. And again, this feels very reminiscent of the character that's depicted pulling the cards. So Richard, like I said, he's been in his robe. Like it seems like he's not really sleeping. It seems like maybe he feels, again, if we go with like fear about the future, he doesn't quite know what Elaine's going to do. Guilt about his past, like cheating on his wife. Self-loathing for not having control in the present. He's like not going and working or like getting himself together. Like he's just sort of ruminating on everything that's happened, and he seemingly is like heartbroken and like obsessed with Elaine, both in both ways, and just sort of fixated in that way. So if we look at the Three of Swords, the other card that we see, and again, the Three of Swords, we see that Elaine has it earlier, she pulls it earlier, and then it comes up in Richard's spread that he does, seemingly. And I'll look at what it says in the book to see if we can add any other information, but it symbolizes the wounded heart, forgiveness. Traumatic events can feel like swords driven into the heart. Like any penetrating trauma, the shrapnel must be extracted for the injury to heal. So, and often again, it shows a heart with swords driven through it. So it says the swords pictured on the card need to be drawn out and released from the heart so it can heal. Sounds easy, right? Well, it's not. It's because the only thing that you can get that can give you the power to release the sword from the wound is forgiveness. Are you unable to forgive individuals from the past who betrayed you? Do you still get angry and feel victimized? What emotions do you feel when you conjure up the image of this person? Hatred, revenge, rage, and sadness. The heart on the card is a victim of a devastating injury. 3 large swords symbolize wounds inflicted by 3 past traumatic events. The swords are weighing the heart down beneath gray clouds. There are 3 complete clouds depicted in the image, yet 1 cloud in the background is incomplete. The 3 completed clouds could refer to the negative thoughts brought on by the 3 swords. The incomplete cloud could symbolize future thoughts, still unformed but potentially influenced by past trauma. Perhaps it's time to at least think of the possibility of future happiness instead of being defeated by the same old tragedies of the past. So again, it's sort of unclear, like, is this about Richard and his heartbreak? Is this about Elaine? Next card that we see is the Devil, so that sort of gives us more information about, like, this, I guess, concerns me. So if we look at the 3 cards like together, the 9 of Swords is this sort of like insomnia, can't sleep, like obsessing over, ruminating over things that happened. The 3 of Swords is kind of the heartbreak, and then the Devil is like temptation usually. And we see later on that Richard actually kills himself. So, like, are they saying that, like, this is the temptation of heartbreak and insomnia was to kill himself? It's sort of unclear to me, but that would maybe be one way of reading it. So yeah, that's sort of where that one goes. And we can look at the Devil in here as well to see if there's any other, again, sort of information to help us out and think about. So if the 9 of Swords is about like your inner saboteur, the Devil is also about confronting that saboteur. And no one likes to confront the Devil. The Devil can be a jarring image to face, represents our shadow self, the inner saboteur. This is the insidious voice within us that tells us we aren't worthy, that we can't be successful, and that we are stuck with our lot. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting that, like, we have this sort of like journey of the cards of, again, like, okay, recognizing and like being overtaken by the inner thoughts or anxiety. We have the heartbreak of the 3 of Swords that maybe is asking us to forgive. And then we have the Devil, the temptation or the invitation to sort of combat that inner saboteur, that anxiety, those obsessive thoughts that are going through our head in that way. And this also could be about Elaine at this point. She's sort of, again, she's already getting like interested in another person. She still is like, okay, Richard's not the one. It's not Wayne. It's not my ex from before. Who's next? Yeah, so we'll sort of keep that in mind as we move forward. So there's only like 2 other instances that come up. So Elaine later on, a detective comes to her house to ask her questions after they find Wayne's body, and sort of there's some different elements that lead them back to Elaine. She says to him, like, I did a Celtic cross spread, and in the future placement, I got the Knight of Wands. And I always thought if I pulled that card, I was about to meet my future husband. And that is sort of when the detective comes calling. And again, we sort of see her like, he's questioning her and seems like very suspicious of her. And then, like, all of a sudden things change and he seems like enamored by her. And so it's sort of unclear, is like, is that just from her demeanor that, like, he thinks she, like, isn't capable of this, or that, like, oh, like, she's getting him to let his guard down. But yeah, she really sort of, like, they end up getting, like, fake married in a solstice celebration that her, like, coven does, basically. They happen upon it in the woods. So there's like a lot of things that I would say Elaine is probably orchestrating at this point. But yeah, let's look at the Knight of Wands. So the Knight of Wands is all about adventure, the urge for freedom, exploration. He's the traveler of the tarot. He's often depicted like in the card visiting Egypt, where you can see the pyramids in the background. It's about kind of removing yourself from like your day-to-day routine, and that you can gain a wider perspective from adventuring. So in the Fearless Tarot book by Elia Adam, it talks about when is the last time you halted routine and explored outside your home or work? Do you need a spontaneous vacation or a small getaway to regain perspective? Do you go to the same old restaurants and walk the same old streets every day in your community? The Knight of Wands is a bold figure and has been long associated with travel, like I said, and travel can really broaden the mind. It frees us from the monotony and allows us to explore environments where people don't know our personal history. So if we think about that in relation to Elaine and her meeting this detective, so she's sort of like wooing him a little bit by telling him he's the Knight of Wands. Like, oh, this is an adventure, but again, like their first sort of like date, I guess, is that he has some horses, or yeah, she asks him if he like likes animals because that's important to her. He tells her he has some horses, and so they go and ride horses together, and again, they sort of end up in the woods where Elaine's coven is again having like a solstice celebration, I believe. Um, and she sort of acts like they just happened upon them, but they do sort of get caught up in the adventure of it all, and he's very sort of like, I don't know, blissfully unaware of what's going on, and they get, again, sort of like suggested that, like, oh, we need, like, people to get married as part of our ceremony, like, oh, we just happened to do this, and they're like, okay, and there's, like, a lot of giggling, and so it's like they go on this adventure together, and sort of get committed to each other through the coven and the ceremony. And also we get sort of this call out of the Celtic Cross spread, which is a pretty famous spread to do. Again, I'm going to read from the Fearless Tarot book, but it talks about the Celtic Cross spread is often the first tarot spread that we encounter as tarot readers. There's many variations. It's up to the reader to decide what version works best. But it sort of looks, so they call it a Celtic cross because it looks like a cross in some ways. So it's usually like you put a card in the middle, then a card on top of it going like horizontally, and then you do a top card, a bottom card, a left card, a right card, and then 4 cards that you do in order like 7, 8, 9, 10 from bottom to top on the right hand side of the Celtic cross. Or as part of the cross. And so there's, right, that's 10 cards, so there's a lot of information. So it is sort of like the workhorse of many tarot readers because you can get a lot of information from that. Again, if you normally do a 3-card spread or pull 1 card, like 10 is going to, again, give you a lot of information. And I can read through what the cards are often representing. So you have the present, you have what crosses you, and that's again like the second card that you put horizontally over the first. What's currently on your mind, your current foundation, the past or now passing, the very near future, the next few months, your closest relationships in the future, your feelings in the future, and the final outcome. And so Elaine says that, like, in the future placement, so perhaps like card 6, which is the very near future, like the next couple weeks, is where she pulled the Knight of Wands. And so when she meets this detective, she's like, oh, okay, great. Like, this is what my tarot spread was talking about. Like, it's all lining up. And she shares this with him as well. And he doesn't really seem to necessarily know what it means, but he kind of just goes along with it. And I think that is the last sort of tarot mention, except for that right at the end, she again is sort of, the detective is like, he's gotten more information. Trish has actually found out that Elaine got with her husband and then he killed himself, so she very much blames Elaine for what happened. And Trish goes into Elaine's home and takes some things sort of before she finds out that Elaine did this. and she provides that information to the police. So the detective sort of has this information. He found out that the DNA matches to what was left at the scene of Wayne's burial, and now he's not really like enamored with her anymore. He's still sort of like interested. He's not entirely against her, but she sort of in the end, like, again, is realizing, like, oh, he doesn't love me anymore. He doesn't necessarily trust me. He questions her. She goes to this bar where, like, she's been with her coven and she's danced before. And other people that are initiates in the coven go and, like, learn to dance or do, like, stripping or burlesque to, like, seduce people as part of their, like, initiation into the coven, seemingly. She goes there and people sort of have been aware that there have been, like, witches around, but then they associate the witches with this crime that happened, and they just start all, like, ganging up on her. And almost everyone in the bar is, like, trying to kill her and shouting that she's a witch, 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 and kill the witch. Again, very much going back to these, like, historical references, these stereotypes about witches, and really trying to harm her. And the detective sort of gets her out of there, puts her in the car, and then they go back home together. But she still is sort of, like, questioning, like, everything. She pulls the Three of Swords again at the end, when she's still with the detective, and then she chooses to get her dagger and stab him. I think it's more than 3 times, but I would say sort of metaphorically. Again, she's, like, heartbroken, and she stabs him with the swords almost in the same way that is depicted on the card. All right, so those are all the cards, and this episode's getting sort of long, so we're going to move into sort of the meanings or lessons learned. And I feel like this is getting more into, like, the choices of the film or some quotes from the film. But the coven leader Gannon says all witches need to figure out where their power lies. Another person who's, I would say, like, is more like the high priestess role in the coven, she says at one point, the whole history of witchcraft is interwoven with the fear of female sexuality. And then we also have Elaine tell one of the men at one point, I'm the love witch. Because he's, like, asking, like, who are you? Like, in this, like, sex enamored way. And she's like, I'm the love witch. I'm your ultimate fantasy. And that is basically, like, what she attempts to do, is be the ultimate fantasy. So I have some quotes from the filmmaker and director Anna Biller. She talks about the sexy witch is a loaded archetype that is simultaneously about men's fears and fantasies about women, and women's feelings of empowerment and agency. We are used to seeing the sexy witch or the femme fatale from the outside, and I wanted to explore her from the inside. She also says women are necessarily paranoid about their image because everybody is judging you by your image, not by what you can do, not by who you are or what your skills are, how smart you are. You're treated differently depending on how you look. It's a terrible burden to bear, and that's partly what I'm talking about in creating a character like this. Elaine is a hysterical embodiment of this perfect woman that every man wants. But what does it take to construct herself in this way every day and have that be her whole identity? With the film, I'm trying to say that the pressure can drive you crazy. And we do see throughout the film that Elaine is wearing wigs and makeup and probably false eyelashes. She has, like, a lot of accoutrements going on, like, in her home that we see. Again, she has, like, love potions and spells, and I would say, like, some like voodoo dolls that Trish finds later. All sorts of sort of a variety of things of witchcraft items, but also this, like, about her identity as well. She does a lot of painting. We see, like, herbs and, again, sort of like creations, decoctions that she's creating, and that she gives to some people. But she really is. We have this interesting moment too, where Trish comes over before she finds out sort of what Elaine did. That she comes over and she's like trying on all of Elaine's, like she tries on the wig and she puts on her lipstick and her eyeshadow and sort of like in this a way that she's like enamored with her as well. She like puts on the character of Elaine, um, and seems pleased with herself. Like seems like this. Oh, I'm into this. Like I can see why she does this kind of thing. And I have another quote that talks about this as well from Anna Biller, but it is very interesting that we get this sort of like Trish is a very like I don't know normal woman obeying the rules of society. She's married. She's trying to make her husband happy. She is concerned that she's not doing enough for him. She's not being enough. That she doesn't look the way that he fantasizes about, and all these things. And even in the end, this is sort of like what comes up to her that like even with this sort of like hatred of Elaine, like seemingly she also does realize kind of like the benefits of being this character that Elaine becomes when she is talking with these men. And on that note, I'll read the last quote I pulled from Anna Biller from the No Film School interview. And she says, "This is how I created the character of Elaine, as if there's a female gaze. The women who respond to this movie aren't saying they're interested in sleeping with this woman. They're saying, I want to learn how to do my eyes like that. It's the same gaze that exists in the beauty and fashion industry. Women look at other women in fashion magazines and they're wearing a ton of makeup and they look beautiful. We recognize that the fashion industry isn't created from the male gaze. We know the fashion and beauty industries are created for women, and they're mainly run by women. I don't know why you can't have that in a movie. There haven't been a lot of film theory essays talking about the female gaze, and just because film theory hasn't examined it doesn't mean it doesn't exist." And again, she's sort of, I would say, she does get a lot of questions about like why did you create this like aesthetically pleasing film but that like doesn't have a lot of substance. Seemingly this is like a common question that she gets asked, which seems inherently offensive, I would say. And so she's sort of speaking to it here of like, okay, I tried to create a film of like with the female gaze in mind, and sort of women's experiences at the forefront. We also get from Elaine that she, I would say, like was abused or sexually abused or domestically abused at different points. She has some reactions to people touching her. She seems to sort of be very cautious about men trying to get her to do certain things or their expectations or just sort of what's again expected of her and she tries to remain in control of that, which for the most part happens, except for that scene at the bar. Where the detective steps in, but if not, seemingly she would have been killed, beaten, raped, seemingly. People were taking off their belts, like as if they were going to take off their pants, like pretty horrifying things. And so the filmmaker, Anna Biller, clearly kind of had all of this in mind as she created this aesthetically pleasing, but also like very, I don't know, like with the female gaze, but also like in the way that it showcased a lot of like problems that women face day to day. All right. Well, thanks for going with me on that journey. Let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today. I'm going to pull from my Goddess of Love tarot deck by Gabriella Herstick and Julia Popesco because it seems like the vibe. We're going with the love vibes today. All right, and like I said, I'm pulling from the Goddess of Love tarot deck, and I pulled the Two of Pentacles. The astrological correspondence related to this card is Jupiter and Capricorn. And the tarot deck guidebook says the Two of Pentacles indicates the relationship that exists between the head and the heart, the self and the other, and the body and the outside world. This duality reflects the interplay between opposing forces before a decision is made. Remember to practice radical honesty. Explore the answers hidden within the physicality of the self. Ask yourself what the situation calls for and feel into the sensations that arise when you question how you can give this to yourself. Listen to the wisdom of your body and then decide. Allowing things to evolve, both within and outside your control, is the act of love and service to the world. The affirmation associated with this card says, I surrender to the magic of the body. I trust in my ability to navigate change. And the journal question for this card says, what is calling for both compassionate action and surrender to transformation? Yeah, and I guess when I think about this card and what it's talking about, I feel like this is very much about, this could have been a card for Elaine. I feel like this is really talking about what was going on in the movie, right? The relationship between head and heart, self and other, body and the outside world, these like opposing forces, the radical honesty, but also like finding where you feel safe in the body and the wisdom of the body and how to make decisions, how to follow your intuition and how to evolve as well, and focus on love and trusting in yourself, to your ability to navigate change, to surrender to transformation. Again, if we think about Elaine, right, like this could be talking about, okay, like, yes, you've had all this heartbreak before. How are you going to trust yourself in your ability to perhaps not kill people in the future, but deal with heartbreak in a different way? And again, like, Elaine's not real, so this is, also a message for us, but talking about the compassionate action and how do we pair that with a surrender to transformation, because we can't just surrender and we can't just act all the time, or we can't take action all the time. We have to sort of find the balance and the in between, and when one is serving us or the other, or sort of how to embody both at once, how to make plans and take action on the future, and then also and how not to be too maybe set on the outcome of that this has to be it, that it must be this way. And I do feel like our character of Elaine does get caught up in this. She is forever looking for the perfect man, and when she doesn't find him, she discards them, right? And this is sort of how she deals with her own heartbreak, but it sounds like this card is asking us to find perhaps some other ways to deal and to be embodied and to make decisions based on, again, our intuition, and to also be, not too set on the outcomes that we think are going to be best for us and that we might have to just let them play out. So links for the tarot decks that I talk about will always be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or find where to purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.